Chapter 1, The Look. I knew something was off the moment Lena looked at me. Not the usual I need that report glance. Not even the passive-aggressive kind she used when someone dared to breathe too loudly near her desk. No, this look was slower. Calculated. Like she was mentally sharpening the knife before the first cut. We were 5 minutes into the weekly staff meeting. The conference room felt unusually full, like people had crawled out of the woodwork just to witness whatever was about to happen. I sat halfway down the table, notebook open, coffee cooling beside me, pretending I didn't feel the tension tightening around my ribs like a belt. Lena stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, lips curled in something that looked like a smile but felt more like a dare. "Before we get into the sprint updates," she said, turning slightly toward me, "I think we need to address the issue of team accountability." She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. I felt a dozen eyes flick my way. Some curious. Some relieved they weren't the target. One or two, sympathetic. Maybe. Lena continued. When certain deliverables are missed or communication breaks down, it doesn't just affect one project, it affects morale. Our reputation. Our bottom line. I forced my face to stay neutral, but my ears were burning. I'd hit every deadline. I had the receipts to prove it. My work had been praised in one-on-ones as consistently excellent. But here we were, and Lena was drawing the map that would lead the whole team to one conclusion. And I was the red X. Jonah, sitting 2 seats down, shifted slightly. I could feel the warning in his silence. Stay cool. Don't give her more ammo. But I didn't need to speak. Because my phone, tucked in the inner pocket of my blazer, was already recording. I'd started doing that weeks ago, quietly, discreetly, after the first weird discrepancy between what Lena said in meetings and what she claimed in follow-ups. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. And something about today confirmed the instinct. Some team members, Lena said, glancing down at her notes, have shown a troubling pattern of disengagement. Missed syncs. Incomplete briefs. Passive behavior that undermines team cohesion. I blinked slowly. That wasn't just a dig. That was a narrative. She was building one, and setting the scene in front of every person who mattered. And she was daring me to react. I didn't. Not yet. Chapter 2, The Meeting from Hell. It was supposed to be routine. Monthly staff check-in. Project updates. A few let's circle back and lukewarm coffee in a too bright conference room. Nothing memorable. But Leah made sure no one forgot this one. I walked in 2 minutes early, laptop under my arm, and the usual cast of faces already mid-scroll or sipping from branded thermoses. The projector was flickering to life. Everything looked normal. Until it didn't. "Morning," I said, sliding into my usual seat near the back. A few nods. One person smiled. But there was a weird current under the surface, like the tension had arrived before I did. And then Leah walked in. She didn't even sit down. Just marched straight to the front like she was about to give a TED Talk. Her heels clicked across the tile, louder than necessary, and she stood next to the whiteboard, arms crossed. "Before we start," she said, "I need to address something." No one breathed. Not even our manager, Dennis, who looked caught between stepping in and vanishing altogether. "I debated whether or not to bring this up," Leah continued, her voice tight but steady, "but I can't work in an environment where I'm being undermined." My stomach dropped. I didn't know what she was about to say, but something in her tone told me my name was coming. And then it did. "Nolan," she said, turning toward me. "I'd like to know why you felt the need to alter the shared presentation slides and delete my section before the last client pitch." Every head turned. I blinked. "What?" She didn't flinch. "Your edits removed my contribution. Then you sent it to the client without telling me." "That's not," I started, but Dennis raised a hand. "Let's keep this professional," he said, clearly trying to stay neutral. Nolan, is there any truth to that? No, I said. I worked from the folder marked final. There were no slides from Leah in that file. I assumed it had been reviewed. Leah's mouth tightened. So it's just a coincidence that my slides were the only ones missing? I turned to Dennis. You can check the version history. I didn't touch anything outside of formatting. Leah scoffed. Of course you'd say that. You're great at covering tracks. There it was. The insult, just subtle enough to pretend it wasn't one. Her tone still calm, but barbed. I opened my laptop, heart pounding. I can pull it up now. But Dennis was already standing. Let's take this offline, he said. We'll review the version history together and circle back. Leah didn't protest. She just gave me a slow blink, the kind that says checkmate without moving a single piece. The meeting continued, technically. But no one really heard the rest. And as I sat there, staring at my untouched notes, one thought kept circling like static in the back of my brain. She planned this. She wanted the ambush. The audience. The fallout. And I had no idea why. But I was going to find out. Chapter 3, the recording that wasn't meant to exist. I didn't mean to record it. I was just setting up the slide deck before the meeting, mic still clipped from the last all hands. Normally I'd unplug it, toss it in my bag. But that day? I was late, flustered, still recovering from 2 nights of broken sleep and back-to-back code reviews. So I left it running. Didn't think twice about it. Not until later. The staff meeting itself? Pure routine. Everyone dialing in from different offices. Brittany facilitating. Leah perched in her usual seat by the window. She wore that power cozy aesthetic she liked so much, tailored blazer over a soft hoodie, white earbuds in, always 2 sips ahead of everyone else in the coffee rotation. We walked through performance metrics, client renewals, Q2 forecasts. Nothing out of the ordinary, until Brittany gave the floor to Leah for team culture updates. And something in her face shifted. I want to bring up something a little delicate, she said, scanning the Zoom grid like she was weighing every expression. There's been some tension on the team. Specifically in product. I won't name names, yet, but some behaviors have made it hard for others to feel safe contributing. I froze. Because I knew exactly what this was. She didn't say my name. Didn't have to. Just threw out a story about dismissive feedback, about condescending tones in dev stand-ups, and private Slack messages that felt a bit inappropriate. I'd never sent anything unprofessional. I had receipts. But in that moment? Optics didn't care about facts. Brittany gave her the full floor. People nodded, silent, confused. 1 or 2 glanced at their cameras like they wanted to vanish. No one defended me. And Leah? She ended it with a soft, almost tearful, I just think we deserve a workplace that values emotional safety as much as technical output. I didn't say a word. Just muted my mic. Let the meeting end. Then I sat in that empty conference room for 5 minutes straight, blinking at my screen, trying to understand what just happened. And that's when I remembered the mic. Still clipped to my collar. Still live. Recording everything. Not just her words, but the look on her face when she thought the cameras were off. The moment she smiled. Chapter 4, the playback. The office was quieter than usual the next morning. That eerie kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, it means people are holding their breath. Nolan didn't even make it past the espresso machine before 2 coworkers abruptly cut their conversation short. One of them, Jenna from finance, offered a tight-lipped smile before walking away like she'd just remembered an urgent email. The other just stared at her phone. He didn't need confirmation. The story had spread. Nolan reached his desk and logged in. His calendar was wiped. The project folders were locked. And someone with admin clearance, had revoked his access to the QA server entirely. Really? He muttered. She actually pulled the trigger. A quiet chime hit his inbox. One new email. Subject, urgent, Monday staff meeting, redacted from, anonymous at internal mail. Attachment. WAV file, staff meeting _ snippet 4. He stared at it. No name. No body text. Just that subject line in the audio file. He clicked. First, the room. You could hear the low hum of AC, the ruffle of papers, someone shifting in their seat. Then Leah's voice. Clear. Clipped. Surgical. Let's just say there were breakdowns in execution. The team lead didn't manage timelines well. Certain bugs went unreported until the client caught them. I won't name names, but that's a failure in leadership. A pause. Then laughter, polite, brittle. From someone. If I'm being honest, it wasn't a surprise. I flagged this months ago. But no one wanted to listen to me over the golden boy. Golden boy. She'd said that. Nolan paused the file. His jaw tightened. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was sabotage. She hadn't just trashed him, she'd done it in a room full of people who weren't even on his team. People who would carry that story out into the company like gospel. He hit play again. My team will pick up the slack. We're used to cleaning up messes. That line landed like a slap. He closed the file. Sat back. Thought. Leah wasn't just gunning for his role. She was building her case, casually, convincingly, with just enough innuendo to fly under the radar. Until now. Because someone had recorded it. And someone had decided he needed to hear it. He stared out the window, brain turning. If this was the game Leah wanted to play, back-channel smears, whispered accusations, fine. He had a few moves of his own. And now? Now he had evidence. Chapter 5, The Source. By mid-afternoon, Nolan had listened to the audio file 4 more times. Every time he thought he'd misheard something, maybe read too much into her tone, Leah's words rang clearer. She hadn't just implied his failures. She'd weaponized them. And now he had to figure out where the recording came from. And who else had it? He didn't trust IT. Not anymore. Leah had her fingerprints all over that department, she'd courted favor there for months, slipping into their after-hours Slack threads like she was one of the crew. Casual. Disarming? Strategic. So he didn't go to them. He went to Jenna. She was the one who'd frozen that morning when she saw him. The one who didn't walk away fast enough. He found her by the vending machines, pretending to decide between trail mix and sea salt chips. Hey, he said, gently. She startled. Oh, hey. I got an email this morning, Nolan continued. Audio from the Monday meeting. Her eyes flicked to his, wide and cautious. Okay. It was anonymous, he said, voice low. But I'm guessing it wasn't sent to just me. She hesitated. Then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. You weren't the only one. He let that sit. Did it come from someone on Leah's team? No, Jenna said quickly. Then paused. At least, I don't think so. So it's spreading? She sighed. Nolan, people talk. That meeting. It was brutal. Some folks thought she crossed a line. Others are just relieved it wasn't them under the microscope. Right, he said. So no one speaks up. Because silence feels safer. Jenna looked down at her snack. I didn't send the file, if that's what you're thinking. But I know who did. He raised an eyebrow. She leaned in slightly. Micah. From AV? Micah? Nolan blinked. Why would Micah be? He was setting up the new mic arrays in the conference rooms. Pilot test. Forgot to disconnect after the meeting. He heard it back when syncing backups. Said it didn't sit right. That tracked. Micah was quiet. Soft-spoken. But not passive. Did Leah find out? Nolan asked. Jenna shook her head. He didn't name himself. Just clipped the file and sent it out with a burner alias. Said if no one would call her out, maybe the truth needed to speak for itself. Nolan nodded slowly. So he had a file. A witness. A motive. Now he just needed to decide what to do with it. Because Leah had started a war in whispers. And Nolan? He was ready to hit play in front of the entire room. Chapter 6, Strategic Silence. I requested the meeting myself. Kept it casual. Framed it as a check-in on project alignment, nothing alarming. Just enough to get on Lauren Blanche's calendar without setting off any alarms. Lauren was the VP of People Ops. The kind of leader who never rushed her words, which made everything she said sound more intentional. I needed that kind of presence in the room. Someone who didn't make decisions based on volume or charisma. Leah, on the other hand, showed up 5 minutes early and tense. She wore one of those corporate smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Thanks for setting this up, she said, settling into her seat across from me. Lauren entered right after, blazer sharp, tablet in hand, posture precise. All right, she said, taking the center seat. Nolan, this was your request. Go ahead. I nodded. Appreciate the time. I wanted to touch base on project load and team comms. Just to make sure expectations are aligned. Leah jumped in before I could finish. If this is about the sprint delays, I've already flagged the scope issues with product. That wasn't a performance issue. I kept my expression neutral. Not pointing fingers. Just looking at patterns. A few tasks have been rerouted without notice, and some cross-functional meetings have been happening without engineering representation. Lauren tilted her head. Specific examples? I tapped the screen on my tablet and slid it forward, a list of meeting invites, all initiated by Leah, with attendees from creative, legal, and product. No engineers. Leah folded her arms. Those were early-stage discussions. I loop engineering in when we hit dev readiness. That's not what product said last week, I said calmly. They assumed engineering had already approved the framework. Lauren looked at Leah. That's a significant assumption gap. I'll adjust the workflow, Leah said. But this feels a little reactive. Is there something else I'm missing here? There it was. The shift? I kept my tone measured. There have also been a few flagged Slack messages, language that veered into personal rather than constructive. I didn't want to escalate. Just document. Lauren sat back. Do you have examples? I opened a folder and passed over screenshots, redacted for names, but timestamped. Leah's messages weren't overtly hostile, but they painted a tone. Try not to overcomplicate this again. We'll revisit if engineering doesn't drag the deadline again. Leah's jaw tensed. Those were off the cuff. Informal. Lauren didn't blink. Intent doesn't always match impact. For a few seconds, the silence pressed. I'm not asking for discipline, I said. Just transparency. I'd rather surface concerns now than let things rot underneath. Lauren nodded slowly. Good. Let's document today's discussion and follow up with individual check-ins. I'll schedule time with each of you by the end of the week. Leah offered a tight smile. Of course. When the meeting wrapped, she stayed behind just long enough to send me a look. Not anger. Not guilt. Just calculation. I knew that look. I'd seen it before. She was already drafting her next move. But so was I. Chapter 7, the email she shouldn't have sent. By Thursday morning, I knew something was off. Slack was unusually quiet. No pings. No mentions. Not even the daily check-in nudge Leah usually dropped before 9 a.m. That's when the first whisper landed, a private message from Cam in product. Hey. Everything okay between you and Leah? She just forwarded some wild feedback thread. I didn't respond, I just opened my inbox. There it was, a forwarded message from Leah to Lauren, BCC unknown. Subject line, concerns regarding Nolan Cross. She hadn't waited for the follow-up check-ins Lauren promised. She'd gone preemptive, weaponizing every slightly delayed commit, every normal project hiccup, and framing my documentation style as an unfortunate pattern of hypersensitivity and unwillingness to take direct feedback. The kicker? She attached screenshots. Not of her own messages. Of mine, stripped of context and timestamped like evidence. It wasn't a formal complaint. But it was a setup. The kind that reads neutral to someone skimming, but sounds like a warning shot if you've ever been the target. And I had been. Once before. Last year, a consulting firm I worked with got hit by an internal conflict that spiraled. A project manager manipulated Jira comments, rewrote timelines, and blamed junior staff when a deliverable failed. I saw it unfold. And I stayed quiet, until it was too late. I was one of the ones cut loose. No official complaint. Just a vague misalignment of communication styles. So yeah. I'd seen this before. I wasn't making the same mistake twice. I took screenshots of everything. Downloaded message histories. Cross-referenced timestamps. I even exported old versions of my project outlines just in case someone accidentally deleted shared files later. Then I started researching attorneys. Not to go nuclear, not yet. But I needed someone who understood employment retaliation and the way digital communication gets twisted when reputations are on the line. That afternoon, I had a one-on-one with Lauren. It was supposed to be a quick sync. But she didn't start with small talk. She jumped straight in. "Have you seen the email Leah sent?" she asked. "I have," I said calmly. "And I've got the original threads, including full context on what she cut out." Lauren tilted her head slightly. "She didn't mention context." "No," I said. "She usually doesn't. But I've documented everything." She was quiet for a beat, then leaned in slightly. "Do you feel like this is retaliation? For the concerns you raised about how your feedback sessions were being handled?" I met her gaze. "Not yet. But it feels like pre-retaliation. Like she's laying the groundwork. Creating a story before I can tell mine." Lauren gave a slow nod. "Okay. Then we document everything. Starting now." She didn't say Leah's name again. She didn't have to. Chapter 8, Patterns and Proof. The office was quieter than usual. Not in sound, but in energy. People still moved. Slack still pinged. Projects still hit their deadlines. But underneath the rhythm, something had shifted. And I could feel it. Leah wasn't skipping meetings. She wasn't missing deadlines. But she was colder now, more clipped. Calculated in a way that felt less like oversight and more like containment. She stopped calling on me directly in stand-ups. When I did speak, she moved on like I hadn't. And when Cam from Product quoted one of my earlier strategy notes during a sync, she didn't correct him. Just nodded and gave him credit. I caught his confused glance through the Zoom square. He messaged me after. "Cam, is everything okay? You seem sidelined." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I turned back to the private folder I'd been building. I wasn't just saving files anymore, I was categorizing them. Threading timestamps with meeting summaries, Slack exchanges, and pull request logs. A living record of the slow freeze she was orchestrating. Lauren reached out again on Thursday. Just a soft ping. "Lauren, hey. Do you have time to sync on documentation?" We met in the small conference room, the one with the flickering light they never seemed to fix. I brought the folder. Printed out. Organized. Every page marked and annotated with project titles and dates. She flipped through the first few pages and paused. "This is thorough." I started logging everything the day after her email, I said. "Context matters." Lauren nodded slowly, then looked up. Did you forward that invite from Monday? The one where she changed the status report cadence without notice? I slid the page toward her. Page 7. She didn't smile. But the corners of her mouth twitched like someone trying not to. We sat in silence for a beat. The fluorescent light above us hummed. She's not just retaliating, I said. She's building a record. Lauren met my gaze. So are you. That night, I went back through every calendar invite Leah had sent in the past 6 weeks. And that's when I saw it, an unusual one-on-one she'd scheduled with someone in operations. The subject line was vague. Follow-up, ongoing concerns, cross. It was sent a week before she forwarded that email to HR. And the recipient? A director outside our team. No connection to my project. She was seeding the ground. I didn't respond. Didn't breathe, really. I just hit download PDF and saved it under a new folder. This wasn't just about me anymore. She was crafting a paper trail, one careful move at a time. And now, so was I. Chapter 9, Whispers in the Loop. Monday started with an anonymous message. Not spam. Not some internet troll. Just a Slack DM from a burner alias. Anon_worker, B. Check the internal doc edits from March. Look for changes to your onboarding playbook. Someone's trying to rewrite the narrative. At first, I ignored it. Figured it was bait or a mistake. But curiosity has its own gravity. So I dug. Our onboarding repo wasn't locked down, anyone with edit access could make adjustments. I filtered by editor and timestamp, then sorted by change summary. Leah's name popped up 7 times. Most were minor tweaks. Language shifts. But then I saw it, an edit on the escalation pathways section. The original phrasing read: team members are encouraged to first speak directly with their manager before involving department leads or HR, unless safety or discrimination is a concern. Her revision? Team members must attempt resolution with their manager before involving other parties, including HR. The tone had changed. Not dramatically, but enough to reframe the power dynamic. And she'd made the change quietly, 2 days after I raised concerns in our one-to-one. I screen captured the change, tagged it in the folder, and leaned back in my chair. She was closing doors before I could walk through them. That afternoon, I got coffee with Anita, one of the senior analysts on another team. We'd never been especially close, but she was sharp, and more importantly, observant. We sat by the window in the building's cafe, city noise humming just beyond the glass. I heard Leah's doing cleanup, she said casually, sipping her drink. I blinked. Cleanup? Anita gave a small shrug. She's been talking to managers. Framing things. Making sure no one's confused about the team dynamics, her words, not mine. Has she said anything about me directly? Anita hesitated, then looked me in the eye. Only that you've been emotionally reactive since Q1 and may not be a long-term culture fit. I felt the heat creep up the back of my neck. I've never even raised my voice in a meeting, I said. I know, she replied. That's why I'm telling you. I thanked her. We parted without a hug, handshake, or even a backward glance. This wasn't that kind of moment. Later that night, I updated my timeline document. I added a new section. Narrative positioning, external perception efforts. And under it, I wrote: March 3rd, Leah revises internal documentation to close off HR access. March 7th, initiates feedback loop to director outside reporting chain. March 20th, emotionally reactive language begins to circulate via backchannel. It was no longer just a pattern. It was a strategy. And I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. Chapter 10, The Anonymous Thread. Lauren. By Monday morning, the temperature in the office had changed, not the thermostat, but something sharper. Quieter. Like the building itself was holding its breath. Lauren Blanche stood by the window of her office, watching the parking lot fill below. She'd been with the company 6 years. Long enough to spot when something was brewing underneath the surface. And this wasn't just water cooler tension. It was silent meetings. Slack threads gone dark. Mid-managers making just-in-case calls to HR. Something had shifted after the meeting with Nolan Cross. She picked up her coffee. Still hot. Untouched. Nolan hadn't said much in the follow-up. Just sent over a few time-stamped threads, a changelog export, and a flag section from a cross-functional doc Leah had quietly updated after hours. But it was enough to raise a different kind of red flag, the kind that screamed anticipatory positioning. And then there was the email. The one Leah sent after their meeting. Forwarded directly to Lauren with a subject line that said nothing and an attachment that said too much. Out-of-context screenshots. Polished language. All before any formal documentation had been requested. Lauren had seen it before, the defensive offense. The subtle shift from oversight to insulation. But what she hadn't expected was the anonymous tip. It landed in the People Ops inbox at 11:03 a.m. No name. No direct accusations. Just a single line of text and 3 attached PDFs. If you're tracking the Cross situation, you should look at how Leah handled the Q4 integration. Especially the part she rewrote. Lauren clicked once. Then again. The documents weren't polished. No cover sheet. Just raw email chains and track changes in the margin, one from a junior dev who hadn't spoken up publicly, one from a customer support lead who apparently asked Leah to stop overriding decisions without escalation. One thread stood out. Leah had backdated a system report and signed off under a proxy account, and when questioned internally, she'd brushed it off as a caching issue. Lauren set her mug down, untouched again. This wasn't a personnel complaint. This was a trail. By the time she left the office that night, Lauren had a new folder on her desktop. It was labeled Leah, Containment or Collapse? And in that moment, she didn't know which it would be. But she knew one thing for sure. They were past the point of pretending. The whistleblower. They never responded to my tip. But I saw the read receipt ping. Lauren had opened it at 11:06. And by 11:12, the digital policy folder was locked to edits, probably being reviewed by legal. By noon, Leah's calendar was blocked out. For the rest of the week. That's when I knew it wasn't just me. I didn't come forward for Nolan. I barely knew him. But I knew the pattern. The way Leah gaslit quietly. The way she rewrote notes after meetings and called it streamlining. The way you left one-on-ones feeling like you'd lost a game you didn't even know you were playing. And when she sent that email about Nolan, the one she BCC'd half the exec floor on, I knew she was playing preemptive chess again. So I sent the files. Not to burn her. Not yet. Just to tilt the board. Chapter 11, The Interview Room. Nolan. The email came in at 7:42 a.m. Subject line. Follow-up, allegations review and timeline clarification. No greeting. No context. Just an Outlook invite from Lauren Blanche marked high importance. I didn't even finish my coffee. The meeting was set for 9 o'clock. By 8:50, I was in the glass conference room outside the People Ops wing, the one they used for exit interviews and damage control. Lauren walked in at 9:01 sharp. Not cold, not warm, just professional. Neutral in the way you learn to be when you've seen too many versions of the same lie. Thanks for being on time, she said, motioning for me to sit. We'll keep this efficient. No small talk. Just a beige folder, a laptop, and the calm efficiency of someone who'd already seen the ending. She clicked her pen once. Before we begin, everything said here is being documented internally. I also want you to know this meeting isn't disciplinary. It's investigatory. I nodded. I assumed. We've reviewed the email Leah sent last week, along with attachments. I'll be candid, there are inconsistencies that raise concern, particularly in how timelines were presented versus our actual system's logs. She rotated the laptop toward me. One screenshot. Timestamped. Leah had framed a delay on my part. The actual logs showed her as the last editor, nearly 4 hours after I'd submitted my portion. "There's more," she said. "But I wanted to give you the opportunity to walk us through your version before we move forward." I told her everything. Not the polished version, the real one. This was the message Leah deleted version. The one where tone gets weaponized, edits happen at 10:49 p.m., and apologies are private while corrections are public. Lauren didn't nod. Didn't react. She just took notes. "We're conducting a broader review," she said after a long pause. "This is no longer about interpersonal dynamics. This is about trust, system integrity, and potential misuse of internal platforms." Translation: they were looking at her. Not me. But still, I didn't breathe easy. Not yet. Before I left, I turned back. "You've seen this kind of thing before?" Lauren's eyes met mine, steady. "I've seen people try to win meetings. This is something else." And I knew what she meant. This wasn't office politics anymore. It was strategy. It was survival. And the game had finally shifted. Chapter 12, The Slack Whisper. Lauren Blanche. The thing about patterns is, they don't break themselves. You have to pull the thread. And sometimes, you tug gently. Other times, you rip the seam wide open. After Nolan's meeting, I didn't wait. I started with Slack logs. Not just messages, edits, deletions, admin access toggles. Every change Leah made to a thread, every reaction she removed, every reply she trimmed to fit a version of events that made her look clean. It wasn't immediate, but by late afternoon, it became obvious. She wasn't documenting behavior. She was manufacturing it. She flagged Nolan's tone in private threads, but the original messages had been stripped. Context gone. She framed his delays, but skipped the updates that clearly came in hours before her claims. What caught my eye most was a pattern of quiet edits made just minutes before forwarding screenshots to me. She knew the workflow. She knew what HR looked for. She also knew how to stay just far enough outside the red zone to feign plausible deniability. But here's the thing about deniability: it only works when no one's watching the raw feed. By 5 p.m., I had a clear audit trail. And it wasn't flattering. That night, I logged into our anonymous tip line archive. A single report flagged a manager for repeated manipulation of internal communication to target underperformers. No names. But the timeline? Aligned exactly with Nolan's original complaint. I cross-referenced the metadata. The submission came from someone on Leah's own team, 3 weeks ago. So this wasn't just Nolan. This was rot. Hidden. Patterned. Familiar. By the time I closed my laptop, one thing was certain. Leah didn't lose control. She never wanted it. She wanted the appearance of order, the illusion of professionalism, while pulling strings behind a two-faced smile. But she slipped. And now I was watching. Chapter 13, The Reckoning. The conference room felt different now. Not physically, same long table, same high-backed chairs, same flickering ceiling panel that had never been replaced. But the tension had shifted. It wasn't aimed at me anymore. Lauren sat at the head, arms folded, unreadable. Leah was across from her, noticeably paler than usual, jaw tight, shoulders squared like she could still bluff her way out of a burning building. I stepped inside, slower than usual, a folder in hand and calm in my spine. Not performance calm, earned calm. "Nolan," Lauren said, nodding. "Thanks for coming in." I took the seat nearest the wall and set the folder on the table without opening it. "Let it wait." Lauren spoke first. "I want to acknowledge the documentation you submitted. We've reviewed the change logs, timestamps, and Slack exports. IT confirmed they were unaltered. Leah didn't flinch. But her fingers twitched against the sleeve of her blazer. Lauren continued. There were discrepancies between what was initially reported and what was actually said, especially concerning your alleged insubordination and documentation errors. I turned to Leah. Would you like to clarify anything? She held my gaze. I stand by my statements. Lauren exhaled softly, then pushed a printout across the table. It was an internal report, an investigation summary. Her name was at the top. And at the bottom? Findings: misrepresentation of internal communications, misuse of formal escalation, breach of professional integrity. Effective immediately, Lauren said, Leah will be stepping down from her role as director of product. The words didn't land with fireworks. Just finality. No one raised their voice. No one threw a fit. It was worse than that. It was real. Leah straightened slowly. Her face was blank, not shocked, not angry. Just hollow. I assume this will be positioned as a transition, she said. That's up to you, Lauren replied. But the team will be informed of the leadership change today. Leah turned to me once more. You've been collecting your receipts for a while, haven't you? I didn't blink. You handed them to me. She gave a dry smile, the kind you wear when the game's over but you're too proud to fold quietly. And then she left. Lauren waited a beat before speaking again. You did everything right, Nolan. Even when it would have been easier not to. I nodded once. I wasn't trying to burn anyone down. I know, she said. But sometimes cleaning house looks like arson. She stood, gathering her notes. Take the rest of the day if you need it. We'll schedule a time to discuss what's next for your role. I walked out of that room slower than I'd entered. Not because I was tired, though I was, but because every step felt like a release. Not revenge. Not triumph. Just the quiet return of something I hadn't realized I'd lost. My voice. My name. My peace. I'd come to that meeting prepared for fallout. But I walked away with the silence of justice. Epilogue: clean lines. 3 weeks later, the office felt lighter. No whispered warnings in Slack. No strategic silences in meetings. No Leah shadowboxing every idea like it was a personal threat. Just work. Real work. The kind that didn't come with undercurrents. Lauren kept her promise. We met. Talked. She offered me a role in a cross-functional initiative she was leading, something forward-facing, high trust. I didn't say yes right away. I needed space to be sure I wasn't just reacting to relief. But eventually, I accepted. Not because I wanted to win. But because I wanted to build again. The rumor mill died down faster than I expected. People moved on. New leadership. New cadence. And me? I got back to writing code and drinking my coffee without scanning the room first. I still think about it sometimes. How one private thread, one twisted narrative, nearly derailed everything I'd built. But it didn't. Because I didn't let it. And because the truth, when backed by receipts and resolve, doesn't just survive. It clears the room. The story she tried to write about me? It's not the one that stuck. This one is.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.